Support for this season of Stereophonic comes from Universal Audio, pioneering audio recording for more than 60 years. Find out more at uaudio.com. And from Perlman Microphones, making tube microphones in the classic style. Find out more at perlmanmicrophones.com. Welcome to the digital airways of Stereophonic, an ongoing conversation series presenting the people, personalities, and perspectives of the modern music business. I'm Dan Kimpel. With our fourth season, we continue to introduce you to those in the spotlight and behind the scenes, and all of our Stereophonic subjects are right here with us in person. It is our objective to entertain and inform you as we reveal tips and tales from deep inside the music industry. She was a queen of kitsch, a multimedia artist, a celebrated party hostess, and a digital pioneer. But Allee Willis was first and foremost a songwriter with over 500 covers, including Earth, Wind & Fire's Boogie Wonderland and September, Neutron Dance by the Pointer Sisters, and I'll Be There For You, the theme song for Friends.
Part of me is interested in such high-level, incredible artistic stuff, and the other half of me is interested in way bottom, kitschy, not necessarily where the talent is, but where the heart is. So, and no regard for the middle. The middle is so boring to me. It's like, just leave me the 2% at the top, 2% at the bottom, the rest of it, take it away.
As one of three songwriters composing music and lyrics for the Grammy-nominated, Tony-winning musical, The Color Purple, she added Broadway to her credits. In 2018, Allee was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and she left this earth one short year later. The indomitable spirit of Allee Willis lives on in her music, in our hearts, and in this encore episode of Stereophonic. We are at the amazing home of Allee Willis, where we're trying not to look too much around us because otherwise we're going to be mightily distracted. There are objects d'art everywhere we look. A lot of mid-century things, a lot of pop culture things, a lot of things that in some dimension might seem tacky, but in the world of Allee Willis, they are objects d'art. Allee Willis, you too are an object d'art. Nice to be here.
Thank you, and tacky. So.
Highbrow, lowbrow.
Listen, that aspect of my life or whatever it is that I do, absolutely as important as music. More people know me for the other stuff, I think, even than the music. So call it what you want. I'm happy.
I love it. Well, the music is certainly kind of our focus here today, But we'll hit all the other areas as well because you do work in many different mediums. Most recently, I think you set a record for the most ever individuals to be the artist.
The lead singer. Well, on a record, period.
Yes, on a record,
but
period.
All lead singers. I wrote a song for, not asked to, just went and wrote it, for Detroit, which is where I'm from. And this would have been around 2012, I would say. People were still saying exclusively horrendous things about Detroit. And I wanted to give back, show something where people could see the spirit in this city, because it was actually this incredibly happy, soulful city that all you heard about were these hideous things. And, I'm a self-funded artist, so I never, have money. But I thought, well, what do I do well? I write songs, I throw parties. Those are my two main skills. So why don't I write a song, which I did with my collaborator, Andre Alexander, and we went back to Detroit and over a series of 2.5 years, did 70 sing-alongs all over the city, would teach the people the song on the spot. So we would go from football fields to laundromats to schools to people's living rooms to churches. It was crazy. And ended up with 5,000 players and singers. You could sing or you could do anything on it you wanted to. My premise being no one from Detroit is bad musically. You have it in some way. If you come from that city, you descend from royalty. So it was pretty amazing. And then it took 2 years to mix it, because we came back with 5,000 separate tracks, each with 10 to 250 voices on it. Took us over a year to be able to hear things just in one session. And then at the same time, I was editing and animating and building visuals that went along with it. And then for me, the most important thing is always the party. So culminating at that point, 5 years, how do I throw a premiere in this city that to me matches the record, basically. So we ended up doing it at the Detroit Institute of Arts, which is actually fifth largest museum in the world, crown jewel of Detroit. And they gave me half of the bottom floor. I mean, it was just this vast space. So there's like Picasso's, Renoir's, Bubbles the artist, my alter ego, But I had these like vast galleries and a big movie theater, and I did a matching interactive real-time art installation, because I wanted a visual, not a moving or animated visual, but I just wanted a visual to accompany the record. So we did. I had 5,000 paper plates, and everyone drew their portrait, and then you answered these stupid little questionnaires I had, and we erected in real time this 50-foot by 28-foot I Am the D, because the name of the song is The D. That's what Detroiters call Detroit. I Am the D wall. And that's meant to be like every time I go back to Detroit and do something, I'll add on to that wall. And eventually I'll get all the Detroiters. So that's where I'm at. I don't like simple things.
I can tell. It's an eye-popping video that comes along, and you've got special guests that we know, some of which you know from Detroit. And one of the interesting parameters I found was that you have Lamont Dozier, who we know from Holland Dozier Holland, wrote and produced all the great, the best ever, and Brother Wayne Kramer from the MC5.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had a lot of Detroit-born singers, all different genres of music, from, original Motown artists through, rappers, hip-hop artists, there today. And it was incredible because literally they all just mixed in. It didn't matter if you were in the Supremes or, a nurse at Henry Ford Hospital. You were all, in there. And my parties are marked by a real combination of high and low elements with no regard for the middle. And one of the main comments about this premiere, also did a Motown salute there, had, remaining Funk Brothers there. And the whole city really just respects that. Motown's just like 2 blocks down from where the party is. So the whole thing, and Motown has been unbelievable to me this year anyway, with all this stuff going on in Detroit. So, but one of the main comments made is that it felt like the old Detroit, which, contrary to many popular beliefs, was very mixed, and just all sorts of people, all ethnicities, all ages, being very, very wild in a museum that called for decorum. So it was such a Detroit event. I was very happy about that. And it gave me a chance to throw a different kind of party. And, parties are really, that's, I feel like, where I really get to express myself the most, to the degree that I'm capable of doing it. Like with music, I'm only doing that portion. Yeah. With art, I'm only doing that portion. And, when you see and hear and feel everything, it's frustrating to work that compartmentalized.
Sure.
So the parties and people, they stay out of my way for the parties. They would have let me swing from those $12 trillion chandeliers, So, we'll see. Anyway.
Wow. But having that Motown DNA musically, because, as you've expressed before, you weren't necessarily a musician, you weren't necessarily an artist, you weren't a singer, The
Motown thing came true full circle through this project, because when I was growing up, it was incredible to be into that kind of music and have that label, Motown, in your city while you were a teenager, because it was so homespun. Everyone in that city felt like they were part of this whole movement that was Motown. So I used to either get dropped off by my parents, or when I had got my driver's license, they would drop me off at Motown, and I would sit outside, and you could watch the people, walk in. You could hear background vocals through the walls, drums. That's how I learned music. Half the time a record would come out, and I'd go, oh, that's, and I would already know the background vocals, So I think the very first fan letter I ever wrote, when I was at camp, I wrote to Berry Gordy, like how proud he made me to be a Detroiter. I think I was 12 or something. And then, so when I was doing this record, that's the first thing everyone would say to you. Do you have Berry Gordy? And I had no way to Berry Gordy. But Berry Gordy had actually chosen an actor that we kind of discovered for Color Purple, Brandon Victor Dixon, who in Color Purple, he was up for a Tony for playing Harpo. That's who Berry Gordy chose to play Berry Gordy in Motown the Musical. So basically, through Brandon, a couple other people in the cast, the director of Motown the Musical, I finally get to meet Berry Gordy, get to tell him the whole story of like sitting out on the lawn. He, who didn't know me from Adam, but as my songs are being revealed, is completely freaking out. So I have this just amazing footage of me like going to him, thank you, and him going, no, thank you, giving me this big hug. But anyway, my birthday this year, which was just a couple months ago, I was in Detroit. And I've gotten really friendly with the now the people that run Motown, which is Berry Gordy's niece, Robin Terry. Anyway, so she said, come over to Motown. It's your birthday. And I'd never taken the tour. I'd only known it from the outside. And then I had been in the studio since, and we actually did one of the sing-alongs in there. But I hadn't gone through the Motown Museum, which is 2 tiny little houses. So anyway, and they surprised me, and they stopped the tour in the middle of the tour, and they said, we know how much Motown means to all of you, but there's one person in particular, and the way that she took her love and she translated it out into the world, and she starts naming the songs, and September can just send anyone into a frenzy. So, and then the whole fucking place sang me happy birthday and gave me presents. But for it to happen at Motown, I thought I would die, Anyway, all right, I know I went on way too long about that.
When you roll out that litany of songs, when you roll out the songs that you have written, I'm sure people are pretty amazed. We're pretty amazed.
Well, the songs fall into different categories. Yeah. And the way songs are remembered fall into, something that seemed like it was this mammoth thing back then is kind of today. You could say it to someone 10 years younger than you. They don't know what you're talking about. And songs that may not have struck you as being that significant at the time, hang around. But I will say that being associated with September is on a whole different level than any of them. It gets bigger every year. I could literally play it to a 2-year-old. They would know it. And I've tested that. I've had friends that have gone, no, you're crazy. I'll go, yeah, watch this. And the intro comes on. The little feet start tapping. They kind of don't know what it is. But as soon as it gets to, do you remember? They are singing along, So, and it keeps being in movies. I always have a joke with my friends. Okay, when's September coming on? And like half the time it does,
We saw it on the Rose Parade too, right?
Was thrilling. That was thrilling.
How cool is that?
Because I have a big thing about what's the first song that I'm going to hear I used to when,
Oh, that's
like
interesting.
Back when, if you were writing and you had a record out, you had a decent chance it might be your record,
Yeah.
And it was September one year, and then this year it was September.
It's so interesting lyrically, September. It almost follows a folk tradition where it tells us a day. You know, if you go back to Ode to Billy Joe, it's 3rd of June. Or if you go back to Long Black Veil, it's 10 years ago.
Or it was the 3rd of December.
Exactly. Papa was a Rolling
Temptation.
Stone.
Yeah.
So I always like that when you get a sense of place, time, and calendar date on a song. I think
But
that's
I've
interesting.
destroyed so many people who come up to me with reverence and tears in their eyes and go, I was married on the 21st of September. I was born on the 21st of September. What's the significance? Nothing. It just sang better than any of the other ones. Nothing.
Wow.
But Mark Cuban, who was a very early technology partner of mine, said that he got married on the 21st of September, so he would not forget the date.
Wow, that is so cool.
That's really good.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a list of songwriters and tell me which one doesn't belong. George Gershwin, George M. Cohan, Irving Berlin, Marvin Hamlish, Allee Willis.
All of them.
Well, no, it's just interesting. We talk about your foray into Broadway, and that actually came about because you had 2 Broadway shows open in one year.
At
the same time. And those are gentlemen, all those gentlemen are the
only ones that had more than one show at a time.
And then just...
for someone who hates theater, it's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, so you weren't a theater
Not
queen,
at all.
huh?
I certainly appreciate it much more now, but I'm way more a TV. And by TV, I mean I'm not talking about, The Handmaid's Tale. I'm talking about like the original Chips or, stuff like that. Reality shows, love. I love pop culture. I wasn't brought up going to theater. I never understood why people would break into song. The theater songs that I loved were things that my parents played. I loved West Side Story. I loved Oklahoma, Pajama Game. But it didn't seem to me that later musicals had that kind of music in it. And I just, I would try and couldn't follow. But the opportunity to write The Color Purple came up. There was no way I would have passed on that. And we meaning Brenda Russell, myself, Stephen Bray, we spent the first year doing nothing but listening to musicals. There aren't that many out on, like on DVD. There weren't that many filmed. The rules don't allow it, which really sucks. So Sondheim was one composer whose musicals were filmed a lot. So we veered kind of toward that end of, what our kind of tastes became. But we did so much research because me especially had to make up for, decades of abuse toward the medium. But it became incredibly interesting to me, and it was thrilling that you got to work on a piece and, develop it as opposed to a song, you're in, you're out, and thrilling working on that project totally turned me into a better songwriter because of the rigidity of the rules. But I still don't go to musicals though.
Yeah.
So
we talked about that rigidity in terms of exact rhymes being one of the principles of
really
lyricism.
You could write something brilliant, but if you don't make that exact rhyme, you will be shredded for paragraphs. If it had been a pop song, there were so many times when we just would have nailed it, but sometimes literally it would take 4 or 5 days before you could find certain words that were just absolutely impossible to rhyme. Like I remember one of them was the word resemble. What is the exact rhyme for resemble? And then we finally ended up with thimble, but the way that we phrased it, it kind of those syllables hit at the same time. But we were expecting to be like raked over the coals with it. The good news is that this was a reconception of the original musical. Not a note of music change, not a lyric drop, 12 minutes less of dialogue, but that was it, and an excessively different approach to directing it. And it made all the difference in the world. Because a lot of people would say to us, well, did you rewrite the music? It's like, no, you can finally hear the music. because there's not a trillion things going on and 97 costume changes, and all of which was exciting the first time. And I, having never done it before, didn't know enough about the medium to understand differences that could happen between productions. So this was a huge and incredible learning experience for me to see what happens when someone strips something of everything. So you are literally just down to music, lyrics, characters, dialogue, story. That's it. I think we had 161 costume changes in the original. The new one had 7, and those happened in the last 12 minutes of the show. Thousands and thousands of props down to maybe 5. No makeup changes, no hair changes, no costume changes other than those. So no set other than just a wooden floor, a wooden back, and chairs. It also makes it very easy for that to translate into touring.
Sure.
Because touring, usually you have to strip way down. There was nothing to strip out. And we have so many of the Broadway actors are in the current tour. So it makes it very close to the Broadway experience, which is great. And we got the Tony and the Emmy this time.
I did know that.
Whereas the first time,
Yeah.
Don't start me. Okay.
It's great that you got the Tony and the Emmy, Allee Willis, and that's a beautiful thing. And it's a particularly interesting story because you don't come from that world. And Brenda Russell, to my knowledge, doesn't come from
Brenda
that world.
was in Hair, though.
Okay.
And Stephen, I think, played once for someone who sang theater. I don't know. And they were just we did not have normal credentials.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what the producer wanted. He wanted someone with a fresh approach. But we had to take so much shit for it until this time when it came around and it exploded. But, it's they don't forgive you for being pop writers. That's shifted. Now, that's primarily who's writing for theater now. Or not primarily, but certainly almost equally.
Yeah.
But this was only like 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you were you were an alien. And then throw Oprah in, it made it even worse.
Yeah.
The natural resentment toward you are infringing on our sacred territory.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, the film world is a lot like that in a certain way, where it used to be people with degrees, and now it's people with samplers and MPCs. So it's a lot different. Media.
It's all inevitable.
Yeah.
And you have no choice but to go with the flow. I mean, to resist.
But you see a lot of things coming. Allee Willis, you predict a lot of things, like with technology.
Yeah, I don't benefit from them. But yeah, there is no question when it came to the internet, Hollywood, I came first.
Yes, you did.
I had to have been within the first 5, to the point that people thought I was crazy. Or why would you give up it's songwriting that is going so well, despite the fact that it's torturing you, and not using most of what you have, which is what the attraction to technology was, because nothing was, what is pop culture, what is music, what is art in a digital, let alone online space. So that became interesting to me, but I never had a bone of business sense ever. So I was clearly not earmarked to be the one who would benefit from the financial aspects of it. So despite having a partner like Mark Cuban, but I think he recognized in me that I got it. I recognized in him that he got it, meaning that there was a social aspect to all of it. And that was actually the most important aspect. It wasn't the business applications. It wasn't, it was going to be the people can connect, they can form communities, they can form collaborations, they will get their information differently. It'll mean the demise of physical spaces, that cyberspace is a very real place to live. And, but he was clearly after the money-making aspects of it, and I was clearly after the artistic ends of it. And it was way easier to make money than to remain artistic. And if you wanted to remain artistic, especially back then, you had to basically sell out. So I was incapable artistically of doing that. So he's got the billions, rightly so.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy on top of it. For me, it's like, I got what I got. Then I kind of gave it up, went into rebellion. Like when the whole internet bubble burst in 99, I was so sick of the immorality, the money guzzling, the stupidity that went on between Silicon Valley and Hollywood. Like Silicon Valley would chase after artists, let's say like Steven Spielberg. Well, what does he know about interactivity? That's not who should be funded here. And entertainment companies, any idiot that had an interface, they were eager to do a thing with. When AOL merged with Time Warner, I think that was 96, it was the only time the New York Times ever devoted an entire page to one story. And then it continued on, in the inside. And it was all the huge titans of the industry at that time, which would have been, anywhere from Steve Case, at AOL, who spent many a night on my living room couch here, as things were being put together. From him to Barry Diller to, John Malone, all the kind of Rupert Murdoch. And they're all saying, oh my God, this is the greatest thing. This is going to change the thing forever. And then all the way down at the end, I think it was the third paragraph from the last, it said, but interactive multimedia artist Allee Willis says, I don't remember what my words were, but basically it's like, this is such a load of shit. And that both companies will be gone. I said within a year and a half. It was a year before it tanked. And it said it's the blind leading the blind. And everyone's rushing to make these associations, really this one is unaware of what this is really about. You know what I mean? And they're not going to give the people what they want. It's a business move. And I was the only one who said that. Therefore, I was the only one who was right. Now, that and a token will get me on a subway, and I don't need the former to get me on the subway. So that's kind of welcome to my career. But I do see it early a lot.
Yeah. What do you see now?
My thing now is more, my whole thing all the way through has been to figure out how to be more and more me in my work. And, because originally you're just writing for other artists. Sure. If you're someone who's got a very distinct personality, that can be a very frustrating thing because you've got all these original ideas and you can see other artists implementing it, but you're still the one who's sitting there and, But so all that was very exciting for a time until it got really frustrating. And especially once, I saw the internet and I saw all this stuff, I realized people needed to know more of what I was going to do if I was ever going to get a shot at being able to work on at these levels that I felt I was capable of. So that has remained this kind of push of mine. It's the same as when I got out of college. I'm 21. It's the same kind of thing. I've got to be me. So my thing is really having guts to do a lot of things that scared me. Performing terrified me for almost 4 decades. That's now my favorite thing to do because I realized I don't approach it as a singer-songwriter at all. First of all, I'm blessed to have songs that people know, so I do them all as sing-alongs. I sit there, I'm texting, I'm, drinking, whatever. I approach it as a party host. And there's always activities, there's always auctions, there's always, all kinds of stuff. So my goal is to start doing that in larger places than I've been doing. I am very interested in songwriting again. That, kind of comes and goes for me. So I'm working with a whole bunch of artists in Detroit. and working with a whole bunch of really young songwriters here, I feel like me not knowing how to play, but hearing every note in my head, and also being very spontaneous, usually aware that my first idea is better than my 10th idea. The first idea needs to be tweaked the 10 times, the 100 times, but whatever kind of blurted out first is usually the gem, not the refined later version of it. So I'm really feeling like the way songs are written today versus in the past. In the past, you would sit down, you'd be at a piano or a guitar, which already would put me to sleep. I needed sounds, and you would work the song out. Well, I'd be ready to go as soon as I have anything from a lyric line to a melody line, even a string line. Turn the machine on. Let's go. Well, in the old days, that was very frowned upon, and it was expensive to do it that way. Today, I feel like people work the way that I came up, always wanted to work. So I'm in the midst of kind of a songwriting euphoria that oftentimes I think may not, come again. Like I need to write another song, like I need a hole in the head, and you want things out. So it's very refreshing to have kind of a whole new round of collaborators. And, you get older and it's not like, you're not the 16-year-old they're looking for, and it's very interesting to me that now I feel like I have passed into grand dame status. You kind of hit that thing. It's pretty incredible, this experience I'm having working with younger kids who really value the experience, not like, oh, we're going to show you, And I must say that when I was younger, they would sometimes put me with older songwriters who were still happening but really wanted to hit, and you're the hot young one, and, and I wouldn't go for it. So I'm very blessed that I'm getting the treatment I'm getting now because karmically I haven't earned it.
Well, what are you learning from your younger collaborators, Allee Willis? What are they teaching you?
So far, everything has been very okay. I work the same way, because we're in early stages. Early stages mean just writing and doing like basic tracks. I'm interested in getting to record phases because I haven't had anywhere near as much, when sampling, not sampling, just the way beats are created. Yeah. By that time, I was so deep into technology and not musical areas of it. Or I was writing the musical where literally you lock the door for 5 years and no one sees you. The Detroit thing, that was 5 years of being locked in. So I just want to be in circumstances I feel like where I can learn. I think they're learning a lot about songwriting from me. I mean, that's sure. The comment that I get constantly is that I'm very quick, and I'm kind of quick with my opinions. Like if I don't like something, I don't like something. If I do, I do. And a lot of people don't know whether they do or not. And my attitude is, if I say I don't like it, it doesn't mean I can't come back to it in 15 minutes. It's just, no, we need to move on now. So, and also being a stickler about closer rhymes and, those, or of how long are you going to take till you get to the chorus, or how, just kind of basic things that to me are intuitive. I'm realizing a lot younger meaning, in terms of who I'm working with, 20 to 28, let's say, that they have so much respect for like great songs of the past. And they're aware that their kind of milieu may not necessarily be writing classics. They may be writing hits, but hits and classics are two different things. And that's really refreshing to find that they're aware of the difference. because I think there was a whole generation that kind of wasn't. Because it's, in a way it feels like it's, it's easier to write because you have access to everyone's great music to get your bed of what you're, doing. Where, in the past, you start with air and you just sit there until a melody, a lyric, an arrangement happens. But you have so many more tools to take from now. So that's, and I am someone who loves taking a piece of this, taking a piece of that, finding this. I'm an archivist. I have a memory like an elephant. So I love being able to take all different elements from all different places and just go, works perfectly together. I mean, look at me, Not going to start discriminating now.
That's good. That's good. Your song, I'll Be There For You, certainly resonated in the pop culture in such a major, major way.
Yeah.
It just, wow. How many, that must have played a gazillion times.
And it still is.
Still is, yeah.
Still is, yeah. I am very blessed to have been part of that song. I was really at the point where I did not want to be a songwriter anymore. This was when the show came, Friends was 1994. Yeah. That was right when so many people were saying, what are you doing? What is this internet thing? It's, it's creepy. It's, and you're going to give up songwriting to go after something like this. But I still had a publishing deal. And I owed a seventh of a song. Every time I thought I had handed in enough, they said, well, there were 4 people's names on this record when I may have only been writing with one. So you owe more songs. It was the first time I ever had a quota. I was signed to Warner Chappell. I did not believe in anything linear. I wanted, nonlinear, interactive. And they said there's this new TV show was not going to have a theme. It is going to have a theme because maybe that'll help promote it. And it's coming on in 3 weeks. And here's the pilot. And the music a large part of it had been written by Michael Skloff. And they needed a lyric and then, little adjustments and stuff. I didn't like it while I was working on it. It felt kind of like a white country-ish almost song. Not that I had any prejudices against that. It just wasn't what I was into. It took time to write it because you're going back and forth with producers. And, you always, if you're going to write for TV, you're going to get notes. But I knew it was going to get me out of my deal. So I handed it in. And for me, it was like, praise the Lord, I'm out of here. And the first night the show was on, a disc jockey in Nashville, I think, made a cassette of the song and then played it back to back on the air for 45 minutes. And they got so many requests for this song, because it was just a 45-second thing, to turn it into a song. And then the Rembrandts, I think, were the only Warner Brothers group that weren't out on the road. The whole thing was just like, okay, who's around? Let's, and then it blew up.
Yeah.
And so it was incredible being a part of that and of a show that is so beloved by so many people. And, to have kind of been an identity stamp on that was really great. And it's fun to hear your song all the time, and that one in September, I feel like, okay, they're never leaving me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But it is the whitest song I ever wrote.
It is quite Caucasian.
Yeah, it's quite Caucasian. It's just, oh, man. But that's the other thing. It's like, would the person that wrote The Color Purple have also written the Friends theme? That doesn't usually go in the same thing. So and that's the part of my career that I love, that I get to do just polar opposite stuff, or that, part of me is interested in such high level, incredible artistic stuff. And the other half of me is interested in way bottom, kitschy, not necessarily where the talent is, but where the heart is.
Sure.
So, and no regard for the middle. The middle is so boring to me. It's like, just leave me the 2% at the top, 2% at the bottom. The rest of it, take it away. Yeah.
The first guest on the Storyophonic podcast was Shelley Peiken.
Oh, yeah.
Who's a great songwriter and somebody we've known for a long time. And on her blog, Confessions of a Serial Songwriter, she told a story about going to an event that you had done. And apparently it had a lot of technical issues that particular night. And she said that she was just feeling for you the whole time, and things weren't happening the way they were supposed to happen. But when she encountered you after the show, your first thing was, wow, yeah, now I'm going to do the next one. And you were already thinking about the next one. And she thought that was such an interesting perception.
Well, I'm pretty sure the one she's talking about was honestly, seriously the worst night of my career. Like, people say that. This clearly was. It was my big comeback performance. This was 2011.
Yeah.
In 1974, I went on tour to support my first album, and I jumped off the stage in the middle of a song. I was so terrified. I just went, I'm gone. Thought I would take a year, kind of get myself together. 37 years later, I rent, a big theater. I make a big deal about the big comeback. And there were 500 technical cues because there's visuals along with everything. And I'm building the set and, catering because food's part of my shows. And 500 technical cues went wrong. Literally, not one worked. It was the most mortifying, frustrating, and it's one thing if, you perform all the time and you have a rotten performance. This was 40 years, comeback. I remember being suicidal, like literally almost to the point where, friends of mine that were there literally took me to just sit down. Like, did I even have a pulse left? But I remember bolting up in bed and realizing, oh my God, I just turned into the kind of kitschy, kind of, bottom feeder level of entertainment that I actually revere. I never wanted to be it, but I loved presenting it. The Del Rubio triplets being my greatest find.
Yes.
That's basically what I became. So if I can approach this, if I can make fun of that, I could actually get back up on stage, because I always felt that not performing was the missing link.
Yeah.
And, if you wait almost 40 years to do it, you don't have another 40 to wait to get it together again. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make a horror film from the footage of this so people can truly see how hideous it is. And then 3 months later, I booked another show, completely different place. And it opened with that horror film. And the audience, you can hear the audience gasping, oh my gosh, she wasn't kidding. This was bad shit. And then when the lights come up, I'm wearing a Titanic life ring, And that's when I realized, you know what? You can get away with anything now. The mistakes are going to make it funnier. I'm not up here trying to be the world's greatest singer. I decided from that second show I didn't even need a band. That if I'm going to do these as sing-alongs, they like singing along to the records better anyway. Yeah. As opposed to a band trying to sound like Earth, Wind, and Fire. They can get close, but they ain't Earth, Wind, and Fire. So then I started really stripping things down and just getting them their basics. And it helped me in terms of the stories. I view myself much more of a comedian, actually, than a singer-songwriter. And I didn't going into it. But the fact that I got that out of it was, pretty great. But really, the more things that go wrong at my shows, some of it we build in now. Like with Andre, who I wrote the Detroit thing with, and he's the only other one on stage with me, we're always bickering, or he's always trying to screw me up. God forbid I say the word friends. Immediately I hear, and he constantly, and we bicker on stage. And but the more that goes wrong, the funnier it is. And that relaxes me because I don't have to live up to anything. I just have to be a good party host, and we got to sing some good songs. So it ended up being a blessing in disguise. But it was seriously the worst and most significant night of my life and career, I would say, was that night that Shelley's talking
Yeah,
about.
I think Shelley's thing was that you just embraced the profluence of moving the story forward, onward and upward.
I mean, you have to. What are your choices? Crawl into a hole or emerge,
I do know.
And that thing of being able to cut yourself some slack. Not take yourself seriously, because people say that, and I think, no, you need to take yourself seriously. But forgiving yourself for things, or in my case, I realized that the mistakes, until people started realizing, ooh, these aren't planned. Originally, I think there were so many of them happening, and people know that I'm into stuff being off, thought that it was planned. But I saw, this is making them laugh. And that's what I want. I don't want them laughing at me. I want them laughing with me.
Sure.
But if this is the kind of thing that can make them laugh, were these to all of a sudden fall down off the wall and we were in the middle of my show, it would be hysterical. If it happens under different circumstances, it's hideous, and you have to repair the wall, and the record's broke, and So I don't know. I'm going round and round, but you understand the point.
I do understand the point.
Yeah.
And we're referencing, of course, this incredible wall of platinum records and gold records that is right here. Like I said, I'm trying not to look around the room too much, or I'll be distracted. I won't be able to ask any more questions. We're in a new year. We're in a new dimension. We're with you. What do you have planned? What's up?
My focus this year is performing and in larger venues, branching out of LA a little more songwriting now that I've hooked into what I'm doing. I have a pretty major museum exhibition coming up. That's not in this year, though. That's going to take about 1.5 years to get together. But I'm very excited. That'll be my first major museum exhibition. That involves the music, the art, the lifestyle, the parties, the performances. It's really, how does all this stuff integrate together? And that's always been my dream of really what I wanted to do. So it'll be interesting within the confines of a museum exhibit how much they can control me. And I haven't never worked on anything like that, curating with anyone before. So I think that's going to be really interesting to me. And it's African-American, all African-American. So that's good. And really my big thing this year is to try and minimalize a lot of what I was doing, because I was someone who just always wanted to stay busy.
Sure.
So I'd end up writing with a lot of people who this is never going to lead anywhere. That stuff's got to stop. It makes me hate music. And it doesn't leave any of the energy left for when the stuff you really need to put it into.
Good point.
So really trying to focus in on, is this something that's going to help me leave my footprint here? Or is it just something I'm doing so I feel like I'm keeping busy? So that's kind of new for me, to have like a few free hours. I'm learning how to deal with that. And we're living in these crazy times.
We are.
And I'm obsessed with all of it. Mm-hmm. I always have TVs on. I always. So that's a big thing, that I am trying to pull myself away from it a little. But then it influences my writing. And I always do tend to write about whatever's happening with me, it's happening inside a larger context. So it's pretty, it's interesting times. Yeah. So I view it as a transition up.
Oh, listen there.
All right, this is my favorite tone. You know why? Because it goes on for like 2 minutes.
That's nice.
And listen to it. I have no idea who you are. I'm not answering.
We could do a hip-hop over it. Oh, there, sorry.
Not answering.
I kind of got into the groove there, Allie. A couple stereophonic questions for you, if we may.
Yeah.
And again, there's an irony in asking you the first question, because you are so multidisciplinary. But just in case you hadn't followed the road of music, art, parties, and conceptual things, is there an alternative career to which you might have gravitated?
I honestly don't think so. I was always, the only things I ever wanted, the only two careers I ever identified that I wanted, first veterinarian, that was really young. That was starting about 7. Then around 11th grade, I had a teacher that I loved who taught. He was the first person that ever talked about advertising, like the impact of Madison Avenue on everything. And I started getting really interested in that. So I majored in journalism with a minor in advertising and ended up in the record industry because I went to an advertising department at a record company and started writing ads, liner notes, radio commercials, but for artists that I loved. Like first one was Janis Joplin, died 5 days later, but I, got in there. Laura Nyro, Sly and the Family Stone, Earth, Wind and Fire, like all these people who I was doing writing about. And in advertising, similar to songwriting, you have to figure out a way to condense it and what's, your main point you're going for. Why am I telling you this? What was the question?
Because I asked you what area you would have gone into.
So and then songwriting came out of that. And I never, ever thought about anything else. Yeah. And I was, as a kid, I was always creative. I was always drawing. I wasn't writing music. I certainly wasn't playing. But I was obsessed with music. It's very specifically black music, very specifically Motown.
Yeah.
And collected everything, could tell you who sang what where. And a lot of Detroit pride mixed in, but my thing to me has been a pretty straight line.
Yeah.
And I've had to take wacky side jobs to support myself, but it never meant stopping any of the other, stuff. It was clearly I wanted to be a songwriter. Originally, I wanted to be a singer, but that was becoming more and more obvious. That part of it was not going to happen. And then I realized, what I love is the songwriting. I like, especially if I like who I'm writing with, then it's cool. When I don't, it becomes a little painful. If I don't think they're talented, it's someone they're only writing because it means they can get more of the money if they're the artist,
Sure.
But to have a great relationship with a co-writer, and laugh a lot, and it's not torturous when you're sitting there trying to think of a line. That, to me, it's a blessing to be able to do that.
You take us right to question number 2, which is you've collaborated with some great writers and artists over the years. Is there a dream collaborator that you would like to work with whom you have not yet worked with?
Yeah, they're really obvious, though. They're pathetically obvious.
Like who?
Justin Timberlake.
Oh, yeah.
Bruno Mars, Lady Gaga, some of the, the producers, the whole bunch of producers. But yeah, nothing original there. But I think I'd be a way better songwriter if I was working, especially with a lot of the mixers and the, I that's when my head tends to pop. And stuff that I can't do, on my own. But I hear every inch of it. Yeah. But yeah, no, I have nothing original to say in that to answer that question.
Those are all good people, Allee Willis.
I know.
There you go.
I know. And I'm ready.
There you are. You're always ready. That's your thing. You are always ready, Allee Willis. I've known you for a while, and you have always been totally ready, and I think that's part of your gift.
Even back in the day.
Even back in the day.
Because that amazes. I think of myself that way, but, you're bumbling around the streets of New York. You have no idea. So.
It has all worked out magnificently.
Kind of, but yes, thank you.
And thank you for being our guest on Storyophonic. Thank you.
Had a great time.
Great. You've been listening to Storyophonic, a regular podcast series with tips and tales from deep inside the music industry. We come to you from Datalight Studios in Los Angeles, California. Our show is produced and edited by Lindsay Tomasic. Our production manager is Kim Strand, and our theme music is by Dusty Gray. Please Please rate us on your favorite podcast platform, catch up with our past episodes, and visit us often for new shows. I'm your host, Dan Kimpel.